Hello and welcome to another video. So here I'm going to do project-based learning, chapters 3, 4, and 5 based on your field guide textbook that we have for class. I push the laptop a lot further back so that you can see more of me. I do tend to talk a lot with my hands and I give little gestures, so I figured I'd push the laptop back so you can see. I have about 30 slides and 15 minutes to do this, so hopefully I can knock out 2 slides in 1 minute or more, and hopefully I can get through this really quickly. Sorry if it seems rushed, but that's why. Okay, so chapter 3, imagine the possibilities. So most important projects are created through a series of decisions. Projects connect directly to students' interests and experiences, and the textbook becomes a reference, not the guide, which is very important to me because I personally like to bring in a lot of outside resources and materials for the students to use instead of just the textbook, because when I was in high school and middle school, most of the teachers basically used the textbook as their one source of information, and we followed the textbook, we did the quizzes in the textbook, and after a while with so many classes that tends to become very boring and repetitive for a lot of students, and it's probably the reason why a lot of my friends didn't want to do any of their homework. Okay, so project planning ideas. You want to identify the big ideas at the heart of the subject. You want to reflect on the importance of these concepts. You want to think about the relevance in real life. So what is this project, and what do you want your students to know, and how do you want them to get there? And bringing in things that they can make connections from their home life or their social life to the classroom, and making connections like that. That way it'll stick in their head better and it'll just be an all-around more effective project. So consider collaborating with other teachers. So I'm a social science teacher, so say I'm teaching world history and the French Revolution comes up. I then could collaborate with an English teacher and say, hey, I know you're going to read Tale of Two Cities, so let's see if we can plan this out so that as the students are reading Tale of Two Cities or discussing it, maybe I can then talk about the history of the French Revolution at the same time. So then students can see that this genre of French Revolution applies not only to history but to English as well, and it'll help them make better connections and they'll get a deeper study of that subject content. Sorry. So I got 6 learning dispositions. Whoa, 6 learning dispositions here. If I verbally do blah, 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 that's probably because I'm trying to get through all of these videos as quickly as possible. Or not videos, but slides. That's why I'm not reading everything on the slide. Plus, I've spent several days going over this, so I really don't want to read every single little piece on there. I do have a copy of this for my notes, for my reference, just so that I can have it. But, and obviously you can see that I've done all of the behind work, but I don't want to keep talking about that. Let's go on to dispositions. So the fixed mindset is either you have it or you don't. You have intelligence, you're either intelligent or you're not, and there's no way to grow on it. But growth mindset says it's like the little engine that could. You keep going, you keep going, you keep trying, and you'll get there. Nurture mindset is encouraging determination and praising efforts over smarts. So yes, this person got an A, but it was easy for them because they were smart. You got a C. However, I saw you work very hard at that, so you did a very good job. And here's what you did really good, and here's what we can help. Here's what you need to do, and here's how I can help you to get better. Encouragement is always better than just you got an F, you got a C, and here's your project, you got to see. Because if you don't nurture and if you don't discuss why, then the student can then feel like they're never going to rise above that C, which was me a couple times. But anyways, so more learning dispositions. Grit, the ability to sustain interest and effort towards long-term goals. So when you've got projects that are going to take a long time, students need to have that grit to just keep going, keep going, keep going. And if students lose interest, they tend to stop trying, which applies to any subject over any content field. Self-control, the ability to manage impulse in the presence of temptation or distraction. This is one that I currently struggle with, mind you. I have a timer in the corner, which I hope does not go off. Anyway, so I have a timer on my laptop. After 30 minutes of working, I have a hard time staying focused. So after 30 minutes of working, I get a 5-minute break. And then I go another 30 minutes of working, and then I get another 5-minute break. So that's personally for me. I have a really hard time with self-control. And I have a hard time managing impulses in the presence of temptation or distraction. I'm working on my laptop and I just want to Google something, so I struggle with that personally. So I don't have very good self-control, but I've been working on it for the past couple of years. Discuss how grit and self-control could work during the class activities. So explain to your class, this is what grit is and this is what self-control is. So we need to then foster these dispositions within you guys to help you get through this, all right? So we need some grit here. Come on, let's get some grit. Let's have some self-control. So use these terms with your class to help them, and notice when they use it and when they show it, and call attention to ways that these capacities positively influence, oh, it's on my head, encouraging and the products of learning. So essential learning functions, research, very, very, very important. When you teach students how to research, they can take those research skills and apply it to other courses and not just your class, which is very, very important. Expressing ideas and creativity, so I don't really want to say that you don't want to foster creativity. Of course you want to nurture that in students, but creativity can be a positive thing. Just because a student is creative, which might mean that they might be a little impulsive, and like I said, they might not have a lot of self-control, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. You can always turn a negative into a positive. So help them express their ideas creatively and help them harness their creativity and use it to their advantage. Collaboration, of course, working together in groups or in pairs, small groups, big groups. You can have them work in pairs or in like 3s or 4s for a short period of time, or you can have them work in bigger groups for longer periods of time. But when the work is divided, it kind of helps students get a better aspect on what's going on, and it can also help them to not feel overwhelmed by the work. So project management, like timelines and stuff like that, can help students bring coherence to their projects and keep them on track, because of course, especially if the project is very long, it'll be very easy for them to get sidetracked, and you don't want that to happen. So reflection and did I spell that right? Iteration? I probably just copied that from the book and I didn't look at it, so I'm sorry if that's misspelled and if I'm mispronouncing it. So reflection, so have them reflect, did this work for them? Or what could we have done to the project to make it more effective for you? So like tailoring, almost like tailoring the project to the students, which is very good and something that we will talk about later on in these slides. Hopefully I'll get through them all. Support study, enrichment using educational resources, helps students to tap into shared textbooks, courses, and curriculum. So kind of like collaborating with other classes and other students to create study guides, websites, tools, and videos, and the tools that you give your students, either online or in the classroom. Develop conceptual framework for your project. So number 1, which important and enduring concepts are fundamental to the subject you teach? So what do you want them to know? Number 2, why does it matter to them? Why do they need to study it? Why should they study it? Number 3, outside of school, who cares about these topics? So yes, I care because I'm assigning this project to them, but they need to know that somebody else could care. And if somebody else cares other than me, their teacher, it can help them to actually put a little bit more effort. Like if they're going to present for the city council, of course they're going to put more effort into that. If they want to present for another classroom or even the whole school, yes, they're going to put more effort into it. Who cares outside of me in the classroom? Very important. Select 1 or 2 of the most promising of these topics and think about real-life context answering the following questions. What are interdisciplinary connections? What other subjects might be incorporated? I don't think I'm going to get through all of this. How might you push past rote learning into analysis? Imagine ways authentic students might engage in the process and digital age skills might be addressed. What is it about these topics that will interest your students? So this is the process of going through and creating the project. I'm sorry, I kind of skipped the last two, but gotta keep moving because I'm on a timer. Strategies for discovery. So overcoming pitfalls, sometimes long activities are very hard to keep with you, so it's very difficult to keep your students sometimes together and with you on this. Even though you created the project and you know the project, they're sitting there and they're not gonna like know anything until you tell them. So you might as well, you need to try to overcome these pitfalls. First off, find them if there are any. Try to find them beforehand, and if you come across one, then all right, let's change it up and fix it so that it doesn't happen again, or this time, or the next time you try that project. Trivial traumatic units, yeah, sometimes units are very, very repetitive and they're not helping the student because they either know it, but they don't know it, if that makes any sense. So they hear those words a lot, but it hasn't sunk in. Oh, it hasn't clicked with them yet. So sometimes that could be a factor as well. Overlaying script with many steps. If you have, ironically enough, you want them to have steps that are very clear and very precise, but you don't want to have too many steps, otherwise students will get overwhelmed. If they see it all on paper and there's like 20 steps to this project, they're going to be like, oh crap, that's too big a project, and they're going to get overwhelmed. So you don't want to, you want to avoid that. Not enough focus on formative assessment. So if you make your assessment summative at the very end of the project, sometimes students can get lost and they can forget some of the stuff that they've already learned, so you want to try to avoid that. Assessment that does feel authentic. So assessment doesn't have to be a simple true or false multiple choice test. It can be a short answer, it can be a reflection, what have you learned and how have you learned it, type stuff like that. So you need to make the assessment authentic to the students. So designing your project. Step 1. Revisit the conceptual framework you established for the project. And you want to go through that and make sure that what you want them to know, they're actually going to learn. So establish evidence of understanding. Plan the vehicle, the project theme or challenge. Sometimes it would be helpful to have a theme. Sometimes it might not. Sometimes you want to let the students think of their own theme. I mean, the more students are involved with their learning, the more interest they will take in their own learning, if that makes sense. So plan entrance into the project experience and plan an exit into the project experience. Collect and track assessment online. I don't think I'm going to get through this, but I'm going to keep trying. So there are many vehicles you can use online, Google Forms and Google Classrooms and Blackboard and stuff to help track student learning online. And the last one, making assessment meaningful. So there's a difference between assessment for learning and assessment of learning. At the very end of the project, you want to assess them of their learning. So you want to test them, what have you learned? And the assessment for learning is stuff that you do throughout the project to make sure that that learning is actually taking place. So I have explained those right there. I hope you can, whoops, other side. I hope you can see past my little head right there. So summative assessment, like I said previously, it's the assessment that is done at the very, very end. So it's the cumulative test. That's a word that we all students know. Cumulative, we hate that word because it means all that stuff that you've done since the beginning that you've kind of forgotten are now you're being tested on, which is why you need to have formative assessment. Formative assessment is the assessment that takes place during, and it is these little tiny tasks like quizzes, class groups and discussions, or written reflections that can help you as a teacher change the project. You might need to change the project, you might need to adjust the project so that student learning is actually taking place, because these formative assessments will tell you, are they actually learning? Is this working? And is what they're learning what you want them to learn? If that makes sense. Yay! I finished! I'm sorry that I had to rush through that, but sheesh. So yeah, end of slideshow. Oh yeah. So I got through this in under 15 minutes. I am very sorry if I rushed through it, because I did, but like I said, 30 slides and I had to get through them all. So hopefully this was very helpful, and let's do this again real soon.